So the first report we will be taking today is coming all the way from Ndop, where an alarming report have emerged from there detailing a serious escalation in violence by the Cameroonian state forces, La Republic the Cameroonian state forces. Well, according to local sources, the parents of General Neverdie, who is a prominent Amazonian fighter, were subjected to extreme physical abuse by La Republique to Cameroon Gendarmerie Brigade operating in the area. The elderly couple previously arrested during a crackdown, believed to be aimed at flushing out General Neverdie, were reportedly beaten to near unconsciousness, rendering them unable to speak and almost unable to walk. Eyewitnesses claim the victims were transported to a local hospital for urgent medical care but were forcibly removed by military personnel and subjected to further acts of torture. Now, this development is being described by human rights advocates as a war crime, with accusations that La Republic of Cameroon forces are deliberately targeting civilians and family members of who they tag as separatist leaders as a form of psychological warfare. For all we know, the use of civilians as bait or human shields is internationally prohibited under the humanitarian law. Human rights observers have drawn parallels between this incident and the earlier detention of a pregnant ex partner of another Amazonian commander. I'm taking us back now to when they arrested the partner of General No Pity. It's all a tactic view by many as a strategic or strategy to coerce fighters into surrendering through emotional blackmail. You pause here and ask, why parents? Why partners? A pregnant one for that matter. Well, sources close to the Amazonian leadership have condemned the incident as part of a larger pattern of a systematic abuse and called for immediate international intervention. The they urge organizations such as the Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, the United Nations to investigate deeply into this matter. Of course, the Amazonian community is calling for those responsible within the Cameroonian military hierarchy to be held accountable at the International Criminal Court for crimes against civilians during this ongoing war. Well, this is still a very developing story, and I'm sure that within the week we would have gotten full detail of how this has come up. We saw this as a breaking news, and we felt that we should bring it up to speed because times and over again we have condemned the act of using humans as shield. We have condemned it. That's on one part. On this other part, barristers, why the elderly? It's obvious it's just for emotional blackmail, emotional abuse. Why an ex partner? Sometime last week, we dealt on a report where children as old as or as little as 3 months, 2 years, were arrested. Is he arrested or even kidnapped? Should be the case here. But it's so worrisome that in other climes, when you manhandle women, you manhandle children, you will be dealt with. Not to talk of elderly parents. But I mean, this is a report where we are bringing to the forefront, to the front burner, and the whole world is just watching, keeping quiet, keeping silence at all of these evil acts. Barrister Mbeseha, let's start with you on this one. I'm sure you remember when we talked about, the children. Sure you remember when we talked about No Pity's partner who was arrested while heavily pregnant. There was also a time, I think it was in Manu, where humans were used as shield. They asked them to go into the bush and do some kind of surveillance. I can remember, yes. It was on this show we condemned that act. It gets worse at every single day. Today, we're reporting about the parents. elderly parents beaten. So sad.
Well, I think what is going on is not new. That is how the people has behaved all along. This is not the first time they do that. Remember that earlier in this struggle, the beginning of the war, there's an organization international known as Medicine Sans Frontier. They are supposed to go around helping the wounded in times of war. What did Yaoundé do? They simply chased them out. Rather than go to help the victims, let the victims die. But remember again, sometime in 2019, 2018, the military would go up to a health center somewhere near Bamenda there, in Akum, and extract victims of the war who were hospitalized and go and kill them. And so, what is this behavior? I'm very sure this behavior is an embarrassment even to their own allies. But what does it mean to them? Simply put, it is an attempt to deny, they're in denial that there's war going on. Total denial, stupidly denial. Because they believe, stupidly though, that if he caught the mother, the wife, the father of a soldier, an Amba, an ASA fighter, he would simply lay down his arms and come out and break you. That is not going to happen. It does not happen. They are in denial because even at this time, even though their generals condoning all these things and sometimes give the commands, what are those giving these orders? Especially the case of Ndop now, where these children and their parents are being held. Those orders are given by some people they call chef de terre, senior divisional officer, who probably in his life has never heard the sound of a gun. But he steps into the war front, makes decisions that have no meaning in war, which decisions are stupidly endorsed by the Yaoundé regime. And so it has never happened. These are people, I don't know, to the best of my knowledge, their behavior is an embarrassment to the world. But again, why are they behaving like this? They are trying to be in denial that there's a war. They first said there was nothing. Later on, they said it was a crisis. But they don't want to call it a war. Because a war has its own definition of what you do and what you don't do. They call it a civil disobedience because they want to avoid the word war. But by every standard of imagination, Cameroon is at war with Ambazonia, with all the ramifications involved. They use drones, they use bombs, they use all what is used, for example, today in Ukraine and by Ukraine and Russia. They use all what is used between Palestine and Israel. And so this is war. These people seem to try not to know it. But again, the time is ticking, the clock is ticking, the ICC is not sleeping, though they might be embarrassed. But one day, they'll be held accountable. Because, as I've said many times before, war crimes they do not extinguish by themselves. But above all, in wars, prolonged wars like this, there comes a time when people who are frustrated observers take action. They say, no, this is too much. And I've given the example of how the Palestinians and the Israelites have been in that conflict since 1948. People claim not to see in the civilized world, including the African country, but it took time. Just 2024, it took time for South Africa as a nation to bring it to light. Not just bring it to light, they sued Israel at the International Court of Justice. With the judgment they secured from there, they were able to indict Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel, which Israel, so people describe it as the 51st state of the United States. In the face of all the opposition, of all the mighty military supporting Israel, they were indicted. Netanyahu is still under indictment of the ICC. And so the people can do what they are doing. There will come a time, and I'm sure not too long from now, that they are going to be held accountable. Denial is not an option. Addressing the issues at stake is the rare approach. And what are the stakes? What is at stake? A war between Ambazonia and Cameroon. What is the issue? The illegal occupation and colonization of Ambazonia. What is the solution? Go to the conference table, address the root causes of the problem. The war will end. Your soldiers will be spared. Your civilians will be spared. We too will be spared. The economy, if you have anyone, will be spared. And so that's what it is. And I feel sorry for them, but that's the situation. Over to you.